Hi, we are going to look into change management today, an important part of project management. Out of the 5 phases: initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing, we are referring to the control phase, precisely the integrated change control. Well, let's look in detail what change management is. Changes are inevitable and they can occur in any phase of the life cycle of the project. We cannot accommodate last minute modifications or scope changes or schedule changes like the change of go live date or any cost changes right in between without doing an impact analysis and a thorough testing. So a system is devised called as a change management, wherein any modification to what is already signed off as a baseline, if it occurs, it would be analyzed, approved, managed and tracked. As we can see on the slide also, it's a process of proactive identification and modification to your project. Designing the system, this type of a change management system, designing of what documents should be made and how things should be tracked is done during the planning phase of the project. And what we can see is change management system guarantees that every change requested is handled properly adhering to the triple constraints. We'll look into the greater detail coming in the forthcoming slides. Well, designing of such a system is done during planning phase of the project. Identification of the authorized people who will form the approvers of the change controls, the documentation that is necessary, the tracking and the sign-offs, the change control form, the release note format. This all is planned and documented during the planning phase of the project. Well, what is a change request? It's not a verbal gesture, it's a written document and it's called as the change control form, and the form is filled and submitted by whoever is raising the change. Look into change control in detail. As written on the slide, change control is the process of handling proposed alterations to items that have been previously designated as fixed. The aim of the change control is to ensure if a signed off item is changed, then the stakeholder should have an opportunity to participate in the control of subsequent changes. Recipients should be aware of it. There should be audit trail of the documents and authorization of the people concerned with the change should be there. Okay, let's look into what type of change controls are there. There are 4 types of change controls: scope change control, cost change control, schedule change control and contract change control. Well, let's say that if there is a change that has been arised, we will have to see if this change can impact the project scope. Next, coming to cost change control, it is also possible that the change which is changing the scope might affect the cost. So it's like integrated to each other, or there may be an independent change to the cost. Something like a vendor who is supplying the raw material right in the middle of the project, he comes and says that he is going to revise the rate of the material. Obviously that is going to affect the cost. So that's an independent kind of a cost change control. There may be a change in the deadline by any individual vendor that may impact only the schedule of the project, not the scope and not the cost. Or the original change that was impacting the scope and the cost also is changing your schedule because of the rework that needs to be done. The go live date needs to be changed. So we can have changes that are integrated with each other or they can be independent of each other. There can be contract change control. There are contracts signed with the vendors, third parties, and there are sometimes provisions also are there that some additional items may be entered, but whatever it is, it has to still pass through the change control system, or what we call as the change management system. Thereafter, each change request passes through what we call as the integrated change control. Here the impact of each request is done on 8 project management knowledge areas regardless of which change control system it originates. So either it came as a only cost change control or a only scope change control, we are still going to analyze whether it is going to impact all of these areas. To be precise, it is said that only the triple change constraints are checked, but the quality is also checked because some changes will happen to the quality also. Some additional risk might be there. Analysis has to be done overall, but the critical ones are the triple constraints. That's why we have written it like this. And let's look at the process flow of how the change control process works. So we will check the scope, time, cost, quality, risk, stakeholder management and procurement. Okay. Thereafter, the change control will go to the change control board where the complete analysis, the impact analysis is presented and the board approves or declines the change request. Okay. Now, as written in the slide also, the reason for the change is justified, the impact is studied, the change can be accepted or rejected, and this decision is done by the change control board. Okay, after that, yes, they again will be incorporated in the project. There will be resynchronization done to the rest of the project plan documents. Again, the design might be changed, the coding might be changed, and again there will be new coding that is done or changes to the old code that was written, and then there will be a release. Okay, this release can be the original project release, or there may be a separate small release planned just to implement the change control, and that can be tracked with the release note. So let's see on the process as a flow chart. So let's say that someone wants to make a change to the project. So the project team reviews the change request, analyze the work required to make the change, analyze the impact to project plan and requirement. If it is impacting the triple constraint, there may be a decision to accept the change or reject the change. Okay. So if we accept the change, and we accept that yes, we are willing to change the change request, only then we come to the synchronization part of the project. Okay, this is the path. But if we, there is also possible the change is very small. If the change is very small, then there might not be much of an impact of the requirements. Still, we would like to go ahead with making the change. So again, over here, the requirements and synchronization will be done, a change will be implemented. If we decide that we are not okay to change the triple constraints, we notify to the requester that the request has been denied and the change will not happen. Okay. Again, when we talk about changing the project plans and the scope, what we call is the configuration management, which is there. If an approved change request affects the scope, then rebaselining the scope or configuration management is enforced. All project plan documents, WBS, activity list, network diagram, resources, all changes, whatever are necessary, will be done, and it's like a ripple effect to the project. Okay. Thereafter, the coding changes are done, combined with the overall project deliverable, or sometimes a small release is also planned, especially for the change control group of changes, and these are tracked through the release notes. Okay. The shows a change control form. So if we can see over here what all is documented in the change control, there is the project name, there is the change to which module is being changed, the change details are there, who has requested the change, what is the impact analysis that is done, what is the impact analysis that is done for the change. Then we have a schedule date, we have signature of the authority who has approved this change, we have the name of the project manager, we have the name of the implementation team manager. This document is very important and it is stored in the change management system, because we should be able to track every change. There is a change number. So when you release the project, you have a change number attached to it. These were the change controls along together released in the project. Or if this is an independent release that has been planned for the project, again we will have that this change number has been implemented, and these are the release notes, these are the items, the functionalities that are released in this small scale. Okay, let's look at the case study. We are considering a card services environment. We all know how credit card departments work and what are the internal systems. They may have remittance systems, they may have receivable system, accounting systems, settlement systems, and various systems. So we are talking of GE card services, and a lot of times software companies or financial companies, they have interfaces with third parties where they send receivable files or any type of files through FTP or network data mover. Okay, so while doing a project of adding a new client on their platform in the coding phase, a change control was raised by the accounting team that this other company is asking for a few fields additional in the file. So now for this, they will need additional data from the connecting systems input to them. This additional fields that the other company is asking, this system cannot produce by itself. They want it from another system. So they will have to raise a request that now in this phase, this requirement has been raised. Now we are already in the coding phase. So much work of the project is already being done. A file format change is going to have a huge impact because it might not affect just this connecting system. It might affect all the other systems. Okay, because this particular data that they need may be important for other systems also, where the attributes flow to all the systems. So there will be a new estimate to this change, a change because the change control is raised. We will have to do estimate analysis as to how much work will be needed to incorporate this change. All the internal systems had to reanalyze whether or not this file format change had an impact on the systems. If so, then incorporate this change in their requirements, design, recode the programs. And because of the amount of rework and the limited resource availability, we had to impact the schedule. So if a schedule is impacted, then the go live date is changing. So a new go live date had to be determined because of the limited resource availability, and the same deadline could not be followed. So this tells you the importance of the change control, the document, its format, and why it's very important to have such changes being tracked. Even after this go live, if somebody comes back and tells you that no, this is not what I asked for, you should be able to show them that this is what you signed off for, these are all signed off documents. That's the importance of change control. Thank you. That's all for today.